The CDC, if you're watching this on Instagram, I'm putting out the clips. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's one long video. The CDC has announced layoffs that amount to about, 5 or 10% of the CDC workforce that's being fired. You see, many months ago, I said that I would only be interested in ever working for the CDC if they laid off about a quarter of the people there. So they've only done about half of what I need. So I'm not going to be going to the CDC. But here's what I think. The CDC has done a bad job. We have to be honest about the CDC. They have done a terrible job. We have a paper out called Numerical and Statistical Errors Made by the CDC. We document 10, 15, 20 errors that they have made that are not forgivable errors. They did not even accurately count the number of dead kids in the pandemic. They repeatedly lied and said COVID-19 was a leading cause of death among young children. It never was. They used propaganda rather than science to justify their preconceived policy notions. They recommended that 2-year-old babies should wear cloth masks for 10 hours a day in daycare, except for the 2 hours a day where they all lay next to each other and take a nap. These are not brainiacs who come up with these kinds of broken, moronic policies. They set 6 feet of social distancing, even though that crippled schools and punished a generation of kids and kept them out of school. There are a lot of people at the CDC who are incompetent. Okay, in a perfect world, you'd somehow go through the bureaucracy of the CDC, the tens of thousands of employees, the 40,000 employees, and you find the 10,000 worst performers and you get rid of them. Unfortunately, that's not what this administration has done. They've not done that. They've just fired, 10%. It's hard to know exactly who they fired. Now, some people say that that's not a surgical strike. It may be firing some good people too. I think there's some truth to that, but the reality is it's very difficult to find the worst 10 or 20%. They're very difficult. They're hiding. They're hiding in the CDC. And when major companies fire huge chunks of their workforce, a few years ago, Meta, Facebook fired 11% of their workforce, the newspapers don't say Meta gutting the engine of prosperity that made Meta great. No, they say Meta is undergoing a corporate restructuring and they probably will emerge more lean. Similarly, I think even if you do fire at random, you will make your organization more lean. You'll lose some good people, but perhaps you can hire back the good people and you've lost the bloated bureaucracy. CDC, NIH, federal agencies, they have a lot of bloated bureaucracy, just like Google and Meta did before they underwent restructuring. The media is covering this like it's a bloodbath among scientists. It's not. It's people losing a job that wasn't guaranteed to you by God, okay? There's no guarantee you should get a federal job and a federal pension and get to sit around all day at home on Zoom drinking coffee and going to a few meetings. There's no guarantee of that. You can lose those jobs. Those jobs should be lost. I would like to do it more targetedly, but a little bit at random is probably also better than the status quo, which is just paying people's salaries. One more point. I sometimes hear people say that even you do all these cuts and cuts and cuts, and it's just less than 0.1%, half of 1% of federal spending. It's not going to be a big chunk in federal spending. Sure, but it's still billions or hundreds of billions of dollars. We don't want to save hundreds of billions of dollars. We should save money. This is public money. It doesn't matter if it's 1%. It's 1% because the whole pie is so big, but it's still worth saving. So my sympathy for the CDC is low. Now, somebody said that, one of the things the CDC cut is the investigative branch, the EIS service officers that go and investigate epidemics and say, oh my God, it was actually the shellfish over there. It was the tuna salad that actually got everyone sick. And that is a useful service in many cases because it helps you identify the culprit thing and prevent more people from being sick. But they give anecdotes to justify the EIS. But anecdotes to me don't justify the EIS. Sure, I'm sure you once found the culprit shellfish and it probably saved a few cases. But in aggregate, does the EIS do a good job? And do they do it at value for money? What's the cost effectiveness of having the EIS service? I don't know the answer to the question. I saw someone say, how to say on Twitter, that remember how Kate Winslet in the movie Contagion flew into harm's way to stop the virus? That's what the EIS does every day. I said, really? Just like Kate Winslet did? I was like, where the hell was Kate Winslet when the infected employee of the Wuhan Institute of Virology walked out coughing? I guess she wasn't right there on the plane. Okay, she wasn't there to help out. That would have been a good one to help out, to catch, Kate. Sorry, you're working on your other roles. I think it's a little ridiculous when you start to use fictional characters to justify the value of a job. I mean, it would be good to use an actual person who did the job, but that's just me. So my overall take on the federal government layoffs is there's a lot of fat. It is difficult to cut all the fat. If they cut it random, they're probably going to cut some useful parts, but they can try to re-add those back later. And in corporate world, this would be what happens all the time. You think corporate measures of productivity are a gold standard? They also have flaws. And so I'm not too scared about that. I do think the reaction is a bit of the Trump derangement syndrome, which pervades the academy and is one of the core problems that we're going to come to in the third point of this video.